Hello and welcome. I'm Ben the Best 5 and I'm coming at you with yet another Kerbal Space Program video in collaboration with Space Chief. Now, for this mission I in fact have a reasonably sized fairing for the rocket I am launching, which is a rare sight in Kerbal Space Program. And I figured that was pretty cool, so I figured I might as well mention that right off the bat. Anyway, what I'm actually launching is a core for a colonization vessel we will be assembling in Kerbin orbit, sending to Minmus for refueling, and from there we will be sending it to a destination. A destination which at this moment is yet undecided. Well, it's going to be one of two places. It's either going to be Val or it's going to be Moho, the hottest spot we could think of because it's close to the sun, or the coldest spot because it's got, cryovolcanoes and it's all the way out near Jewel, which is very, very cold. So yes, Moho or Val, and the way we will pick is it will actually be a vote. That's right. In the pinned comment down in the comment section, there's going to be. Actually, no, it will be in the description. Yeah, in the description, there will in fact be a link to a poll where you can vote for either going to Minmus, not Minmus. Well, we'll be going to Minmus, but that's the refuel as a final destination for our craft. Should it go to Moho or Val? That's up to you guys, the audience, to decide. Anyway, that was a really nice, smooth gravity turn I managed to get there. So, if you want to know what a really smooth looking gravity turn looks like, you should go and watch that. As for our orbit, we are going for a bit of a higher orbit. That's just because I do like to make my orbits a bit more generous when I am putting something in an orbit which is meant to be rendezvoused with, just because it allows ample space for a lower orbit to be placed by an object, which means it can catch up to an object quite quickly without risking hitting the atmosphere. So I'm going for a more than 100 kilometer, I'm pretty sure it was more than 100 kilometers, yeah, 127 kilometer orbit there, so that I could in fact have a craft in a much lower orbit. So that's why my turn seemed a bit, funny, why I didn't flatten out a lot at the end, but it was actually a really smooth gravity turn. So yeah, very excited about that. You should watch that. And you may have noticed that I have recovery gear on the upper stage, because this upper stage is only going to be going to Kerbin orbit, which means that it in fact makes perfect sense to recover it, because recovering from somewhere like a Minmus orbit actually isn't too feasible, just because you'd have to, because it's too fast and too hot, and it generally will actually burn up, unless you use the engine a lot, but that just introduces a whole bunch of complications. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, my upper stage recoveries are pretty cursed. They never go right. The engine, for some reason, just decides to point the wrong direction, or I don't pack enough parachutes, or I haven't worked them out yet. I haven't perfected them yet, and well, that's a bit of a shame, I guess, because recoveries are kind of the staple of the channel. It's actually the idea I used to start the channel, and yeah. Anyway, yes, this orbit is fairly nominal. Also, the fuel tanks there are in fact empty, and that's just so that we can save on weight, and so that we can refuel at Minmus to give us additional delta V, as well as launching smaller rockets. Well, yeah, uh, while making the rocket more appropriate for its size. Anyway, here is the booster. You might have also noticed that this video is being played at 1x speed. That's just because, well, most of my videos I glaze through this kind of launch procedure and recovery stuff at like 8x speed or 4x speed, or even 2x speed, depending on how eventful it is. But this time I am just playing it at 1x speed, just to give you guys a nice, close, in-depth look at what an actual, launch and recovery operation looks like, just because it's been a while since I've done a video where I really, heavily focused on them, and since I've gotten quite a few subscribers since I last did a video really focusing on one and showing it in great detail and whatever, I figured I'd do one where it was slowed down so you can just kind of see what's going on and maybe try and replicate it yourself or something. And also, since I'm doing an upper stage recovery, I figured it would be a good idea to try and introduce more of a focus on just doing cool stuff. Anyway, as you might have noticed, I deployed the air brakes. The air brakes were actually super important. I just thought I'd mention that. Whenever you're building a craft with recovery, you need to include air brakes, unless it's or some barriers off the side, because those seem to work well. Because if it's just a cylinder, it doesn't matter how much it flips, it actually doesn't slow down enough for to deploy the parachutes. But if you've got those air brakes on it, then it will actually slow down, no worries, and a parachute deployment and recovery is actually a rather simple process. And we splash down, we can recover. And now this is just, well, this is how I go about recovering a thing. So I wait until I'm near the Kerbal Space Program Center. So near the Kerbal Space Center, at which point I detach and I burn retrograde, and I try to end up on the land, actually just off the Kerbal Space Center, because the way I figure it, right, it'd be most useful if you can land it on the land just off the Kerbal Space Center, because that way you can pick it up with a crane or something and take it to a refurbishment area, instead of just instead of having to send a boat out to get it from the land and then putting it onto a boat. It saves a trip, So that was my thinking. So I was gonna target the water just off the edge of like the Kerbal Space Center, very, very, very towards the edge, but and then let the air resistance pull me in, and yeah, and let that magic stuff do its magic. Except it's not magic; it's physics and rocket science. I was actually surprised at just how long it took me to to actually burn to a state where I could safely lower it down. Now the reason now it would be more efficient if I did perform the burn further away from the target. However, if I perform it closer, it's going to be more accurate. And since I did have a large fuel budget, I actually wanted to use as much of the fuel as I possibly could up, just because that's better for things like landings. I figured I'd do it this way, just simply because the conditions seemed right to do it that way, for the reasons I just explained. And yes, this needs air brakes. Anything which you're trying to land without having to rely on a propulsive landing, and even if you are going to rely on a propulsive landing, it makes it so much easier if you have some air brakes or some grid fins. Grid fins do kind of do a similar thing. They aren't in the game, or at least stock ones aren't, but you can make them using things like robotic hinges and stuff, and I have, and they kind of work, but they're a bit buggy. But it's nice to see them in an update or even in Kerbal Space Program 2. Plus, they are good for high-speed vehicles. So yeah. Anyway, here is the craft lowering itself down the same way as the first one did. However, this one actually has fuel still in it. And recovering, and usually mounting recovery gear to a upper stage would actually not be worth it. However, the engine that it's attached to is actually worth so much that it is definitely worth it, especially if you can recover it as close to Kerbin as this. However, I in fact didn't pack enough parachutes, and we touched down a little bit hard and lose the engine, kind of making the entire thing a bit worthless. However, we did manage to capture a big fuel tank, which might be worth it to be honest, might not be. I know, those parachutes and air brakes do end up costing quite a bit. Anyway, here we can get a good look at the core and transfer stage. We haven't had a good look at them, so I figured I'd end on a screen with them. Other than that, thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, and please leave a like in the video, and comment if you want to interact with me or other Kerbal Space Program enthusiasts. Please make sure to check out the vote in the description for either Val or for Moho. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.